You're listening to the Experience Matters podcast, powered by Officium Labs. Each episode will focus on one challenge, talk to two experts, and offer 3 innovative solutions to propel you forward. It's the 1-2-3 punch to accelerate your customer experience results. Here's your host, Nate Brown.
Hello, everybody. Nate Brown here, your host for what is the final episode of the Experience Matters podcast. But do not despair. We are elevating all of this in collaboration with our friends at Arise, of which one we have with us today are the CMO of Arise, Sean Wisdom. Hello, Sean. Good day.
Hey, Nate. How are you? Great to see you.
I'm doing great. I've got my flashy blue shoes on. I'm arised and ready to go.
I love it. I love it. Arise. That sounds great.
Well, I've been excited for this conversation. You know, we've been looking at these different trends, Sean, and these trend lists that are coming out for 2022 and having some realizations about them. And we're excited to dive a little deeper into 5 tactical ways that you can improve CX now. But before we do that, introduce yourself to the audience, if you would, please.
Hey, no problem. So Sean Wisdom, I'm with Arise Virtual Solutions. We are the leader in gig CX and have been for over 25 years. So our focus is helping, major global brands reinvent the way that they think about engaging with their customers. We have a saying that we kind of feel like customer experience management is passé and over, and we're really focused on customer experience elevation.
Okay.
Where you can truly, never abandon a call. You can be there for customers, rethink scheduling, completely change the way that you think about quality, and then do it at a significant cost savings as well.
Well, expectations of customers have certainly elevated, so I guess we have to as well.
Yeah, there you are.
Exactly what we're going to work on today. So thank you so much, Sean, for taking the time and joining us. So we're going to walk through together 5 ways that we believe that you this year, maybe even this month on a couple of these, can jump in and start to truly change and elevate your mentality and ultimately your behaviors, your approach to CX inside of your organization. So we're going to start with one here, and I love this term, Sean, that you've coined. It is the VariantVerse. Tell us about the VariantVerse.
You know what? I'm ripping off Spider-Man. There's no doubt about it.
No shame.
Spider-Man into the multiverse, and then everything, the global phenomenon, which is the latest Spider-Man movie, and it's all about the multiverse. So the way I was thinking about it, when COVID started, I can remember I told my wife, March of 2020, if this goes like we think it went in China, we'll be done by late May. If you can believe that, right? In late May, this will all be over. The whole world will go back to normal. But what we didn't anticipate was so many variants coming out. We've had Alpha, the variant that started in December of 2020. We had Beta that came out in May of 2020, Gamma, November of 2020, Delta, May of 2020, and now Omicron, November of 2020. Guess what, folks? There's a new variant every 6 months. And in fact, there's another variant, I think it's called B2, that has just been identified. And so in the CX industry, I think that the whole CX industry did a great job of pivoting amazingly fast to try and get as many workers working from home as they could. But unfortunately, the expectation of the way that those technology solutions were developed was on the idea that this would be a short-term fix. We don't think it's a short-term fix. We think that this is going to continue to go. So when we say VariantVerse, we mean that you have to expect that every 3 to 6 months, you're going to have another variant that may drastically change the way that you think about how you house people, the technology that you use to connect with customers, and what you're doing. So in fact, Gartner just put out a study. About 44% of companies that they surveyed said that they have decided to push back reopening plans, and that's just from December. So while we see Omicron starting to wind down, who knows what's next and the impact that B2 will have for us. So what does this mean for a tactical strategy? Well, listen, we know that brick and mortar call centers where people have sat shoulder to shoulder, particularly offshore, near shore, right now they're empty or they're staffed in a much less packed in way. And so capacity is still a major issue. So where do you get capacity? What's the tactical way that you can get capacity? We just completed a study. We asked 3,500 consumers how they feel about almost every aspect of CX. We call it the truth about customer care.
Nice.
And some pretty shocking data came back from that. about 21% of the people that we surveyed said that they're waiting more than 10 minutes for voice call
Cool.
help.
Wow.
16% said that they're waiting more than 10 minutes for live chat help. So
Really?
about 1 in 5 customers are really having a horrible experience. And that translated into the big question that we asked, which is, what is the most frustrating thing for you about engaging with customer care? You can probably guess what it was. It was response times.
Yeah, of course.
So from a tactical strategy perspective in dealing with the VariantVerse, what do you do about it? Well, first, I think you've got to have a technology strategy that is allowing for secure remote access, but not only to brand systems. Every company's got a CX platform, they've got an ERP platform, they've got e-commerce platform, they've got a trouble ticketing system. Around that, though, they've got IM communications and email communications, notification systems. So, how are you building a technology model which allows secure remote access, not only to the core systems that you execute CX in, but also all of the capabilities that you need for coaching, training, and supporting agents? So we think it's really, really crucial to focus on that. And as you're thinking about the way to go forward with outsourcers, do they have that crack? Do they have it dialed in and optimized, this kind of fully holistic technology model? The other thing is capacity. We know that we're in the midst of the Great Resignation.
Yes.
People had these months off. They looked at the job they were doing and said, you know what? I don't really want to do that anymore. I'm not sure if you know this, Nate, but what do you know what one of the most searched terms during COVID has been?
I would guess something around Tiger King.
Well, that is I'm sure that's in there, but online education has been one of the most searched terms. It's a collateral effect of kind of the world that we live in, where people have decided to redesign the way that they work. And
Makes
so
sense.
people are getting new degrees, they're going into different fields. This is really where we think the power of the gig economy can help CX leaders. There are 38 million gig economy workers that are looking for part-time work only. Now, these folks are obviously in an economic situation where they can think about, their income differently, which means they've got more experience. They've had, probably better education. They're more talented. They're more mature. So their ramp to proficiency is much shorter. And then finally, just the nature of the way that they think about work fitting around their life versus the opposite is they've got much more flexible hours. They can staff at really unique times. They can work smaller increments and fit better the call arrival or the chat arrival patterns that you're trying to deal with. And they can do that with better quality. So in the VariantVerse, hey, you got to crack your technology for remote. And then secondly, you got to really think about looking at a very different talent pool when it comes to how you're going to deliver capacity to serve your customers.
Yeah, well, that makes a ton of sense, Sean. As I think back to my 12 years as a customer service leader practitioner, I was too rigid. I mean, really, right now, when we don't know what's going to happen, we have these ideas of a new variant every 3 to 6 months, and these things that may or may not transpire. Flexibility is key, and if you put all your eggs in one basket, you're setting yourself up for failure. So having some hybrid, having some capability to flex and tap into very unique resources, such as those that arise, it gives you a great deal of strength for things unknown.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Good. So that is strategy 1. So let's move on to strategy 2. And to kind of go back to that intro there, me and Sean were looking at these lists of trends and things that were coming in 2022, and they're very hypothetical, they're very cerebral, kind of pie in the sky type things. What we're looking to do here is to give you some very specific things that you can do to prepare yourself and to elevate your CX this year. And so we're noticing that the role of the agent has changed dramatically. I mean, this has been happening for some time, but how can we equip our agents for the things that are going on around them? I'm going to drop a crazy stat on you. I was shocked at this one, Sean, when Gartner came out with this just a few weeks ago. 75% of the volume in 2026 is projected to be just callers calling in because they're lonely.
Wow.
What do you think about that? I mean, how strange, right?
Listen, I think it speaks to the times that we're in. It speaks to the time that people are looking for connection.
Yeah.
We're even though the things are opening up, right? We're still more bunkered than we ever were before.
Yeah.
And even a fully open future is going to look more constricted than it used to. People are just going to be, much more conservative about the way that they engage. So that's an amazing stat.
It's so interesting to me. I mean, we look to our workplaces for connection. And one thing that is happening, as things evolve and things change in terms of the way we work and how we work, people are hungry for human to human connection. And our customer service workers have to be equipped and very mature, very, very high in EQ capabilities to deal with these scenarios. I mean, I was shocked by an article that came out by NY Times a few weeks ago. Jean Bliss shared it on her LinkedIn, and I picked it up, and I mean, it hit me hard because it was talking about how customers are acting out in wild ways, very abusive, very, very difficult, so quick to escalate. And our agents have to be phenomenally skilled to be able to de-escalate and handle the things that are being thrown at them every day. I mean, one thing automation has done well, it's taken the easy stuff, the remedial volume, and it's handled it pretty good. Self-service has gotten pretty darn good. So what's left is the difficult stuff and the lonely colors. So are our agents equipped for this? So I mean, we have to, number one, my big thing here is we got to protect them. We have to have good, clear process and policies that are bubbled around our agents to where they're not put in a situation to fail, where they're having to tell the customer something that's very frustrating. I mean, let's set good, clear expectations with customers upstream in the journey so that it's not all trickling downhill to customer service in a really bad way. That's setting our agents up in a situation where they're bound to fail. So let's do a great job setting clear expectations, and let's have really good, clear policy and procedure so where customers are not lashing out and they're not as prone to be attacking an agent out of frustration and confusion. What do you think about
Yeah,
that,
in our
Sean?
research, we saw that the agents are really trying hard.
Mhm.
When we asked about the agent experience in our study, The Truth About Customer Care, we found that about 80% of consumers believe that on 5 different metrics of attitude, are they empathetic? Were they kind? These kind of things. That about 80% said, yeah, we're very satisfied or we're somewhat
Wow.
satisfied with the way that the agents are engaging with us. So in this more emotionally fraught time, agents are really giving it their all. The question
Yeah.
is, are we giving them the tools and the capabilities needed for them to handle this more, Forrester called it emotionally fraught phone
It's a
conversations
good word.
or chat conversations.
And I think too, Sean, thinking about the barriers that exist to support that the company has erected before they ever get to the agent. I mean, if they just had to jump through hoop after hoop to finally engage with that agent. I mean, you mentioned those handle times being over 10 minutes. There's this idea of hiding and retracting the phone number until you jump through all these knowledge articles and different things. I mean, you run the risk of having somebody that's just channel switched several times coming into that call guns blazing, already frustrated. It doesn't matter what the agent does. They've
Mhm.
already lost that battle. So it's our job to create that seamless digital experience, that seamless handle that happens prior to the agent engaging to where they have an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so crucial that in this, particularly when you think about this new hybrid work environment, right? You've got a tremendous amount of agents that are working from home. They don't have the traditional community.
True.
When you think about the way a lot of BPO outsourcers are supporting them now, that's why I think it's crucial. Once again, with that technology stack, does your outsourcing partner have the capability to provide a tremendous amount of support
Mm,
and culture
yeah.
even though you're in a remote work environment?
It can be done, and we're working with some great teams that are doing it really well. So it's hard. It takes a lot of intentionality, but it can be done. Awesome. Well, hopefully some nuggets there and our practical advice on point 2 around how much the agent's role has changed. But let's morph now. The agents are not the only ones who are now in a very different context the consumers, their behaviors have changed so much as well. Sean, take this one away for us.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I think we think about certain aspects of the way that our world has changed, wearing masks, things of that type, that are really on the surface. But this has driven significant changes in just the way that we live. One of my close contacts from Forrester said that every single morning in New York City, she would go up, she would go into a bodega, she would wait in line, she would get a cup of coffee, she would get a small pastry, she would then go into the office. Well, once COVID started, she started using their mobile app, and a little bag with her coffee and her pastry were sitting out front. She didn't have to wait in line. She said, I don't care if COVID goes away completely, I'm never going back to standing in line.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's an example of the way things have changed. We really, Gartner just put out this report, and it really details 5 ways that folks have changed. Number one is this personal revolution. So watch the news at all, that people have flooded out of the Bay Area once all these big tech companies said you can work remote, right? Because the Bay Area is just incredibly expensive. And so, people are really thinking about new personal economic strategies, right? Where do I live? Where do I want to be located? All the way to the types of products and services that they look at. As I said, online education, one of the top searches during COVID. People have decided, in the midst of this new world, I want to be new as well. So that's cool, right? The other thing is this concept that they had of time warp, which I thought was pretty cool. And that is, time is now incredibly fluid. These quiet moments that we used to have are gone. So think about your commute, right? When I was on my commute, I would often call into CX for whatever company I was trying to get help with, because that was a 20 to 30 minute time I'm in the car.
Right.
And, I had this kind of quiet time and nothing to do. A friend of mine, when I told him this, said, was shaving, I used to shave every morning. It would take 10 minutes. It was like this little quiet, compartmentalized place. But those are disappearing. Think about when you used to work in an office, your team would all go out to lunch, right? Your peer group would all go, even if it was just down the hall to the cafeteria. So these compartmentalized quiet times are disappearing. And so the way that we think about that as a CX organization leader, as CX leaders, is crucial. We talked about it a little bit with your comment on loneliness, but another big trend is that they're seeking sincerity. Consumers are looking for more uncomplicated engagements, right? They want to be relaxed. 61%, according to Gartner, want to be relaxed or comforted by engaging with customer care. So, this has been an incredibly stressful time. It started with, oh my gosh, is my life going to be in danger? It's gone to, whoa, what's happening with my work? What's happening with my family environment? What economic decisions am I making? So you stack on top of that the fact that because of the way that traditional BPOs had built capacity planning, where it was all brick and mortar call centers, then it became impossible to get help. And so the level of frustration and stress just goes through the roof. The next big trend is just omnichannel, right? Those of us probably on this podcast, just because we're on a podcast, are fairly technically proficient, and consequently have probably been using e-commerce exclusively for a long time. But that's just not true for about 50% of the population of the US. They were very worried about e-commerce and the fact that ordering something, would it show up? Would it be the actual product that I want? That's changed completely. Huge 100% increase in e-commerce sales over the course of COVID. And so, but they're much more comfortable with impersonal transactions, but at the same time, it's creating some more tension and engaging with CX to figure out, when is my product going to be here? Is it the right product? I got my product, I don't like it. It wasn't what I expected. How do I use it? A lot of the personal touch that you used to get in retail, you now have to kind of try and figure out a way to get from a CX perspective. And then finally, obviously, so many people are at home, and they're not going out. So the e-commerce and the way that if you think about the time warp, and then you're at home constantly, there's so many impacts on you. So what's the tactical strategy? When we think about the time warp, when we think about being at home all the time, and we think about omnichannel flex, the these things mean that you can't depend on a contact arrival pattern like you used to at all.
Right.
You can, the total volume of contacts is going up significantly. And then ultimately, people are looking for you to be responsive. So flex, right? Your ability to flex capacity is crucial. That's why we think the gig CX model is so powerful, because people that are working part-time gig roles are not looking for a 4-hour block or 8-hour block. They're looking for 30 minutes of work here, 30 minutes of work there. As a workforce management executive, think about the palette of capabilities that this gives you. Very, very different than you had traditionally, where you just accepted a certain amount of abandons or a certain amount of unproductive time.
Wow.
So gig CX allows you better flexibility to handle these kind of unexpected or non-traditional contact arrival. And then the other thing, when we think about this personal revolution and the sincerity that they're looking for, as we talked about, gig CX workers, more mature, been around the block, stable economically, they've got more vertical experience, and then consequently they can handle the issues with more empathy and make a better personal connection regardless of what channel that they're working on. One of the other things that came out of our study is that 58% of the 3,500 consumers that we surveyed said that they are actually having to call in or contact customer care more than once to resolve their issue. 58%. Another 89% said that when they escalate to a supervisor, it's because the agent didn't have enough knowledge. So when you think about the personal revolution and sincerity trends, your ability to put highly capable, empathetic, knowledgeable, tenured, mature, gig economy CX contacts in touch with your customers is crucial.
It's so interesting on many, many levels. One of my favorite coworkers, Keith, got to pick on him for a second. I mean, there's this whole thing about bleisure, business leisure. Now people are out here working and traveling and just being wherever they want to be, working where they're happiest. This guy in the last 3 months has bought a sailboat, has gotten engaged in the Caribbean, and been to Hawaii. He went skiing for a week in Tahoe and has killed it from a work perspective. It simultaneously. So it's just amazing to me how much different our lives look and how much the expectations have changed in terms of these patterns, these flows that our society we're in. They're gone.
Yeah.
So interesting. Cool. Well, I love that. All right. So moving on to another really interesting point here around mission-driven CX. So this is one that we talk about at Officium quite a bit, and now certainly Arise. And it's this idea that people are gravitating towards brands who have a really unique brand core, an identity. They're resonating a personality that is compelling, and they're drawing customers in by taking a bold stance about who they are and who they want to serve. And so, I mean, Denise Leone is brilliant on this topic, and she talks about these compelling brands and what makes them so compelling. But ultimately, she tags in the fact that it's only compelling if it's reliable, if it's trustworthy, and if customer experience comes in to back up these promises and back up these perceptions that people form around these really interesting mission-driven brands. So it's the combination of marketing, historical marketing around let's say who we are, let's tell the world who we are. But now, no, we don't get to tell the world who we are as a brand. The world is telling each other. It's one customer saying to another, this is what this brand actually delivers. Here's what they say they are. Here's what they actually do. And so customer experience has become this conglomeration of marketing and customer success, which we're going to talk about in a second, which is a much more customer-centric, sales-driven approach. And all these things have combined into a really strategic view of customer centricity and how it can help to level up our business. So, I mean, that's the reality. That's the trend, is that people want to work with businesses that are really compelling, that are really clear in terms of their brand identity. And so what's the tactical element here? Well, it's to assess how relatable are you as a brand? How are you putting yourself out there? So it starts with good VOC. It starts with really clear VOC in terms of how are people perceiving us and where are these perceptions being built? How can we ultimately enhance these perceptions that are out there? And then it becomes an alignment exercise. And we love doing this, where we take this brand core exercise and we're unifying your CX change coalition around here's what makes your brand unique and special. Here's the experience that you're actually delivering. Here's how we bring these things together in a way that's going to make your customer be like, wow, they said they were this and they are that. And I mean, that's just such a compelling way to generate loyalty, to ultimately deliver on really good, clear promises. So Sean, maybe this is kind of a new term for you. What do you think about mission-driven CX?
No, I think it's crucial, and I think that companies are recognizing now how crucial it is for them to that the culmination of the products and services that they provide are going to have some type of broader impact, right? What is that broader impact within individual communities, or the way that they empower people to be successful or engage with each other? It's so important. I know that personally at our company and the last company I worked for, we put a tremendous amount of time thinking about why are we here, right?
Mm,
And
yeah,
then,
question.
once you have that mission, right? What is the purpose of this company? Once you have that mission, how do you translate that down into individual tactical actions that your CX team takes to make that promise? Because the customer facing team fulfill the mission, right?
Yeah,
If your mission is, a pretty plaque in the lobby of your business, that's one thing. If your mission is articulated by every single customer contact,
mm,
it's a way to build long-term relationships with customers, really be essential to what their success is, and ultimately create, uh, the type of um, substantial growth, not only in your brand's revenue, but also your brand's reputation and impact.
yeah. I mean, North Highland just came out with a stat a couple months ago that 87% of business leaders are tagging CX as their top growth engine, the number one way in which they're going out there and competing and generating revenue. And now we're seeing that almost 90% of organizations have a chief experience officer or a similar customer-centric role in the C-suite to
Hmm.
be able to leverage the strategic value of this whole CX engine that we're talking about here. I mean, forever, it would drive people like me crazy because organizations would give lip service to CX. And in their minds, it was just, oh, well, serve your customers well, don't be mean. Is like, no, it's so much more strategic than that. And what you're talking about, Sean, is those actual behaviors where we can align people consistently in terms of here's the brand voice, here's who we are as a Rise, as Patagonia, these great brands. Here's what we are, and here's how we can ultimately represent this company as an ambassador and generate this type of loyalty that's going to grow revenue in the ways that we're seeing. But not just anybody can do that. You got to have true brand ambassadors that are capable of absorbing the brand voice and participating in it authentically. And that's exactly the type of gig worker that you're describing.
Yeah, and there are two things here. I think this probably segues into our next topic, Nate. But this concept of how do you elevate your customers, right? How do you go from being a vendor? How do you go from being a retailer to
Mm,
being an essential part of their success?
nice.
It takes a lot of individual tactical parts working together in a finely tuned machine. But how does gig CX apply? Well, you're starting with a talent pool that's got more maturity, more experience. They use the products and services, so they're more empathetic. So
Hmm.
you're starting right with this beautiful foundation, and then you apply on top of that all the technology tools. This concept of completely radical, flexible scheduling, which means you quit looking at abandoning 8% of your customers as success. At a Rise, we call traditional BPO, we call it acceptable failure.
Mm,
I know that I'm just going to, 8% of my customers are going to be really dissatisfied today,
it's a lot.
but that's cool. That's, check mark. We did great today. We just think that that's a crazy way to look at the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to have, agents sitting around playing Sudoku, in the early morning and the late afternoon,
Wordle
and I'm going
now,
to be
but
paying.
okay.
I'm going to be paying for that. That's just a crazy way to look at your business. There are just much better ways using the technology that we have at our disposal to
Indeed.
deliver this mission-driven CX, but to do it in a way that is radically different than you've thought about it before.
Yeah. So we'd love to help you with that brand alignment strategy and ultimately connecting that compelling identity that is aligned upon to your customer experience in that voice OC VOC program so that you can truly know where these thoughts and perceptions are being formed. So very, very good. Okay, let's finish with our big KO punch here, Sean. We have strategy 5, what I've been coining the rise of customer success. So we keep hearing that this term come up, and it's been kind of cannibalizing in some way a lot of what we used to describe as customer experience, roles and responsibilities and different things. And in a way, it's kind of intimidating because it's taken the world by storm in all these ways. So I mean, what ultimately is customer success? In my mind, it's maximizing customer value. Period. It's maximizing value. So one of the greatest ways that we can do that is in the customer service engagement, but it requires an agent that is very, very, very capable of understanding the framework of what's going on inside of this customer interaction and being able to be the guide, as StoryBrand puts it. So the customer has a need. They have a definition of success that they're striving for. And we have to be very attuned to what that specific customer's definition of success is and effectively guide them closer to it. We get to be the Yoda. We get to be the Dumbledore in this scenario and champion this customer for their cause. We're not the hero of the story. Ultimately, they are. So great stuff from StoryBrand by Donald Miller there. But it's really demonstrating a totally different approach to sales and marketing to be the guide. Let's understand the customer's definition of success more, and let's effectively bring them there and maximize value along the way. And that's where we get that stat about 87% of business leaders saying that CX is their biggest growth engine because we're acting as the guide. But it requires a great deal of intentionality and skill. So, Sean, you've been talking about CXM is dead, and now it's CXE. Tell us more about that.
Well, so when they say that 87% think that CX is their biggest growth engine, it's because so many of their channels are now suffering, right? First, retail engagement across a wide variety of industries, financial services, car dealerships, where you buy soap. They were shut down for a long period of time. We talked about the changing consumer behaviors where consumers are like, well, hey, I was ordering online and or over the phone, and I'm actually pretty comfortable with that now. It's much more convenient in my time warp. Okay. And so the leaders of these companies are recognizing that consumer behaviors have changed, the way that they engage with your brand has changed, and consequently there's a significant opportunity to change CX into a profit center versus just a cost center.
Yeah.
When we talk about customer experience elevation, we're basically talking about throwing out the rule book. Okay, the rule book is you're booking in 4-hour or 8-hour shifts. You're going to have some underutilization throughout the course of the day. You're going to have some abandons throughout the course of the day. You've got tremendous attrition within your workforce. You're going to be rushing people out of 3 or 4 week training classes onto the floor and they're going to have limited capabilities at that point. So you have to build this intensive kind of structure of support around them because as we said, 89% of escalations happen because, according to our research study, because the agent doesn't have the proper amount of knowledge. That's just what we've learned to put up with. So if that's CXM, I say fire it. I say get rid of it. I say that what we need to do is move to something that's much more technology based, that's much more dynamic, much more responsive, and takes advantage of this, probably one of the biggest changes in kind of economic deployment in the way that people are moving to these gig models because it just works better for them personally. So we say CXE, customer experience elevation, because we believe everything that I just described, poor agent experience, not protecting and supporting the agents, them having limited knowledge or scheduling being limited and rote and boxed in, all those things just don't apply anymore. And yet I think so many brands still think about it in these traditional paradigms. It's time to throw out the traditional paradigm. And it's time to really start thinking about a completely radical model of creating customer success. Now, listen, we call it elevation because at Arise, we believe that being essential to your customer, right, is about the fact that you're building this deeper relationship with them. One of my favorite comments are always has been, people don't buy a product, they buy a better version of themselves.
Indeed.
All right. So whether that is a car, whether that is a super slick jacket that you may be wearing there, Nate, you're buying a better version of yourselves. And that's the purpose of a brand, right? At its core is to help your customers be more successful. So how are you building a CX model that enables and supercharges that mission?
Well, so well said, Sean. I mean, there's just so much synergy here in terms of it's an awesome partnership that we've forged here in terms of the way Officium was thinking, and now Arise together, and all these capabilities that we're able to bring here. And we sure love being able to help organizations make this transition from this idea of being reactive, from being a cost center, to, wow, let's leverage the greatest resource that we have in this organization, our customer care professionals. Let's morph them towards this great opportunity of customer success to maximize customer value. And so many of the things we've been talking about pave the way for that. The tools, the mentality, the brand identity, the brand ambassadorship. I mean, that ultimately is what paves the way to be the guide, and be the guide very effectively. So great stuff. Well, I hope this has been encouraging for everybody. There's hopefully a lot of things that you can take away and bring to your leadership team. We'd love to be in that conversation with you. I mean, let's get really strategic. Let's get really energized around CX this year in 2022 and make some great things happen. I love the Arise tagline of be there, be aware, and be essential. So I mean, let's be essential, truly. It's great stuff. So thank you so much, Sean, for bringing your wisdom to us. I'm sure you've never heard that before. Really
thanks, Nate. Great discussion. Great discussion today.
Awesome. So this has been the Experience Matters podcast. And until next time, make experiences that matter. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Experience Matters podcast, your 1-2-3 punch to overcome CX challenges. For more information on making experiences that matter, visit www.officiumlabs.io or connect with us on LinkedIn.